and I both know that when we look back on our lives at what seemed to be the greatest curse turned out to be the greatest blessing. And often what seemed to be the greatest blessing was, well, not such a blessing at all. Knowing that, we might as well love what is. Hi, I'm Deborah Poneman, founder of Yes to Success seminars, where we offer knowledge and tools for you to live your ultimate life. Now, the person who helped me internalize this concept of loving what is was a great teacher, Byron Katie. I don't know if you've ever heard of Katie, but I don't know, a few decades ago, she was living in Barstow, California, and she was a housewife. Well, kind of a housewife. She was a housewife, except she was an alcoholic and a rageaholic, and she was so depressed that she didn't get out of bed for over a year. And finally, her family couldn't take it anymore, so they put her in a halfway house. And while she was in the halfway house, she continued to rage against the staff and against the other people. So they put her in this solitary confinement in an attic at the top of the building. And she was still raging up there when one day a cockroach walked across her foot. And at that moment, she went into a state of what we'll call self-realization or enlightenment. And she saw the perfection of everything in the universe. She saw the perfection of the cockroach walking across her foot. She looked out the window and she saw the perfection of everybody's movements out in the yard. She saw the perfection of the sun and the sky and the birds and the trees. And she obviously was released and she went home, and her body of knowledge called the work is based on the realization she had when she woke up. And that is this: when she believed that something should be different than the way it is, she suffered. When her thought was something like, my husband should be nicer to me, or my children should respect me, and the reality is he isn't and they don't, she suffered. And that when she didn't believe those thoughts, when she didn't believe that anything should be any different than exactly as it was, she felt peace. She had her awakening when she realized that what had been causing her deep depression was not the world around her, but her belief that the world around her should be different than it was, that there really are no mistakes in the universe. Katie says that through the lens of our own self-inquiry, we can have true peace. She says that our attempt to find happiness is backwards. Instead of hopelessly trying to change the world and the people in it to match our thoughts about how it or they should be, we can instead question our thoughts. And by loving reality exactly as it is, we can experience freedom in the end of suffering. One way her work has really always helped me through tough times is by my simply asking the question that she taught me to ask, and that is, how do you know this is supposed to be exactly the way it is? And the answer is, because it is. Argue with reality and you will always lose, but only 100% of the time. He shouldn't have died. Well, how do you know he should have? Because he did. She shouldn't have lost that election. How do you know she should have? Because she did. If she shouldn't have, she wouldn't have. So when something is very painful in my life, I simply ask myself, how do I know this is supposed to be exactly the way it is? Because it is. If it were supposed to be any other way, it would have been that way. I love the story that Katie tells that after she had her cockroach experience, she would have little groups in her home. And then people she didn't know started showing up at her door to meet the enlightened woman. And she would open the door and they would say, namaste, namaste. And she had no idea, what namaste meant. So she thought they were saying, no mistakes, no mistakes. And she would say, yes, you are absolutely right. Anyway, once you accept that we live in a benevolent universe and you realize the utter perfection of creation, then, you'll just fall to your knees and you will know that there is a way to overcome every obstacle. You might not know how to, but the intelligence who created the universe and the obstacle in the first place does know. And you can give the obstacle to that intelligence and then surrender and know that your miracle is on its way. Maybe not as soon as you think, but it will arrive exactly when it's supposed to. The Reverend Dr. Barbara King, now deceased, who was a dear friend of mine and the minister of the Unity Church in Atlanta, in her book, Transform, I think it's called Transform Your Life, Transform Your Life, she said this. She said, this sense of all rightness may not come the first time we seek it or even the second. We may feel as though our prayers are not being heard. We may wonder if we're praying correctly or if prayer is even the thing to be doing in the given circumstance. At such times, it doesn't hurt to keep in mind the wisdom of our elders who understood and who were more patient than we seem to be with the workings of God. My grandmother, for instance, used to say about Jesus bringing grace into our lives, he may not come when you want him to, but he'll always come on time. And I'll end today with one more quote, and I love to give credit, but I have no idea where I heard it. And it goes like this: don't require the universe to move more rapidly than it is. It is actually working perfectly, and it will prove that to you if you will give it a chance. So have a wonderful week, loving what is and knowing that when you think that something should be different than it is, that is when you suffer. So for our own happiness, it really is best to love what is. And I send my love to you.